Content Station.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gwen Harshaw, and this is the Spin with Gwen show. I am so excited to be here. It is a wonderful, beautiful Wednesday morning, even though it's raining. And one of the reasons I'm so excited is my guest. I have Kathy Mackley, who is the Managing Director of ASCO, the Autism Society of Central Ohio. And if those of you who know me, this subject is very close to my heart. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to her and giving people information about the Autism Society. And hopefully some of you can join in and follow us on Facebook, on my Facebook page, Gwen Harshaw /Facebook. And you can even call in with questions at 614-824-2139. Before we get started, I want to talk about one of our sponsors real quickly, Royal Property. They are a wonderful company, and it's a full-service real estate company. They offer a wide variety of services. They help first-time home buyers navigate the tricky real estate and mortgage process. They help with real estate counseling, where they can help current real estate owners evaluate their current properties and consult them in finding the best solution for long-term gain. They also help home buyers, where they offer first-time home buyers and others the help they need in securing their future home and assist with the pre-qualification process, along with rehab and renovation help. They have spent years creating a contractors network that is able to provide property renovation services of various levels. They can also assist in total property rehabilitation. So for all your home buying and renovation needs, please go ahead and call 614-859-7542 or visit their website at www.royalpropertyent.com. Royal Property Enterprises. Again, they're very, very helpful. So now we're back speaking with Kathy. So I'd like to start out just asking you a few questions about you. How did you get involved with the autism community to begin with?
My third born child, a son, had a speech delay when he was very young, and we took him to try and get a diagnosis to find some help. And we were told basically that we were over anxious parents and just to wait, he would outgrow it. He didn't. In fact, it got worse. And finally, when he was 5 years old, he was diagnosed with autism. That was 22 years ago. And there was nothing in Columbus. They basically gave us a diagnosis and said, go and figure out how to deal with this.
Wow. I am very familiar with that situation, and I'm excited that you didn't listen to them and you went ahead and forged ahead and helped your son and many other people. So you've been the managing director or been involved with ASCO for how long?
Ever since my son's diagnosis. This week after the diagnosis, we found the Autism Society support group, which met once a month, and the rest is history. We've been active in the Autism Society since then.
That is wonderful. I was mentioning this a little bit earlier that that just touches my heart. I could almost cry because my son is 23 years old. So you were involved with that before my son was even born. And I mean, it's helped. There have been so many changes in society. So I'm
Yes.
very, very grateful. And I want to let people know more about ASCO. What would you say is the main mission of the Autism Society of Central Ohio?
Well, our mission is to improve the lives of all affected by autism, and that includes families, that includes caregivers, that includes therapists, doctors, whatever. What can we do to help you on this journey?
That's true. You're also involved with Special Olympics.
I am. My son has been involved in Worthington Special Olympics since he was 8 years old. I think it's the best free occupational therapy available. It's a fabulous program. He's made many friends, had many social contacts, and in fact, I credit the lessons he learned in Special Olympics with allowing him to letter in cross country in his high school. So.
That is amazing. I have a similar experience. My son was involved with Gahanna Special Olympics for a number of years, and I think it was incremental, but there were so many advantages. He learned so many social skills, and I'm very, very grateful. And you mentioned something very important. It's free.
Yes.
And it's throughout the United States, throughout Central Ohio, and
Throughout the world.
throughout the world, and it's an amazing event. Going back to the autism, how would you define what the hallmark things that say someone may have autism or be on the spectrum?
I think autism is primarily a disability involving communication and social interaction. So if you notice abnormalities in the development of communication or the development of social skills, those to me are the highlights. It can be as young as an infant who doesn't make eye contact, doesn't smile, is happy to turn his back on you and sit on the floor and play with a toy without interacting with an adult. Or
I appreciate that description because a lot of people talk about that and they use the word complications with communication and socialization. And that's a very good description because it kind of encompasses most of the issues. But I like the word complications as opposed to, sometimes people say deficits, because the spectrum is so broad, and there's even something called splinter skills where some individuals with autism, they have a deficit or they have a complication, but they can also have gifts where they can be exceedingly gifted in certain areas while they have these other struggles. So you want to be careful when you're looking at your child or even young adult, and if you're wondering, just because they may be gifted, that doesn't mean that there isn't something else they're struggling with.
And I hate the term splinter skills because I think it implies that they're not talents, they're not gifts. They kind of play them down as something that's just an accident rather than something that is to be celebrated and utilized, and which may in fact enrich not only the life of the individual but those around him.
I so agree. I'm going to keep that in mind because I have used the term. I didn't think about it like that, but that's very, very important because we're all part of the human family and we all have gifts and things, and you just don't know. And we never know with young children or babies what those gifts may turn into. So we need to keep an open mind. So thank you very much for that new observation. You said it can start as young as infancy.
Yes.
What age do most people notice changes that might be related to the spectrum?
Well, there's actually some research where some psychologists can notice as young as 10 or 11 months in terms of where babies focus when their mothers are talking to them. I really think by the time they're 2 to 3 years old, most of them are manifesting pretty clearly. There are some subtle things that can be diagnosed earlier.
Okay. I'm sure you probably agree with this. One of the reasons we're talking about those early signs is that early intervention is so important. It can make such a difference in their development of skills. Just like all children, having early intervention, early education is just very, very important. You mentioned how the doctors didn't really take your concerns seriously.
Yes, I think, back in the 1990s, autism wasn't in the forefront. Pediatricians didn't routinely screen for autism the way they do now. And it was just not thought that somebody could be mildly autistic, I think is, if you were autistic, you were hand flapping and you weren't talking at all and you weren't at all social. Right. So they were looking for the severe cases and they weren't really looking for the more subtle cases.
So, well, I'm glad that's changed. And the irony of that is it's so common. It's just, and no one really knows why. But the incidence has been going up and up and up. And just recently, I believe it was earlier this year, in 2018, the CDC, you're right, ironically, Autism Awareness Month, April, the CDC upped it that 1 out of 59 children, am I correct,
yes,
can be affected by autism. So most likely, if you're a viewer or you're watching us or you're listening, you know someone with autism, you know someone who's affected. So it's so important to get this information out. It is one of the fastest growing developmental disabilities. And in fact, it's so interesting. You were talking about the different aspects and how it can be hard to identify because it's so broad, and I think that's what went into some of the representations of autism. They have different puzzle pieces that kind of represents it because it is somewhat of a puzzle. There can be these gifts, but there can also be these struggles, and they have the different colors. So if you see a puzzle piece with this, they're probably referring to autism. And as you may or may not be able to see, I'm wearing my autism swag or my jewelry, my earrings and my necklace, because I always carry it with me. I think it's important. I think some people are a little surprised. They're like, well, why do you talk about it all the time? Or we often, when we have our son with us, we'll introduce him and we'll mention he has autism, and they're like, well, why do you do that? And I'm like, well, it's who he is. And I was blessed enough to have a friend of mine kind of counsel me on that when we were first dealing with the diagnosis and the grief. They were saying, you know what, that's how God made him, so why not? And you know what, it has blessed us in so many ways. The response has been so positive. So I just want to explain that to everyone. I've actually had situations where I've been wearing my earrings or my necklace, and I've been at a venue, and I've been at a coffee shop, and someone who works there said, oh, I guess you're in my tribe. I have a brother who has autism, or I have a cousin. And it's always a positive experience, and it also helps with that sense of isolation that often we deal
Right.
with.
And I think that is the big thing, is families affected by autism often become isolated from the community, from other family members, because of misunderstandings, because if their child, because of a sensory issue, they can't stand the noise or whatever, has behaviors or a flat out, what we call a grand mal tantrum in our house. Sometimes the other folks who are standing nearby are not very supportive. They seem very judgmental. They make comments about, he's old enough, he shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. And that makes families sometimes reluctant to go out into the community or to participate in events.
Right.
So again, that's another place where Autism Society is here for you. We try to create community events that are sort of first steps into experiences. For instance, we have coming up in September an event at the Adaptive Sports Coalition up in Powell, where we kayak as families. We have bocce ball. We have sort of a Nerf. They have a kind of like a Nerf archery set, so they can experience archery, frisbee golf, hiking, just being in the outdoors in ways that, in a safe environment with lots of other folks there to help the families to experience it. And and it's our hope that the families and the individuals find something they love to do, that then they can expand on and become more and more integrated into the community.
That is wonderful. That's one of the things I truly admire about the Autism Society. They're very grassroots in a sense, and they do a lot. I mean, there's political activity and other things, but they really try to think about those things that fall through the gap. And what I mean by that, what makes a fulfilling life? It's social interaction, it's community connection, and both of us and a number of other people have a lot of events, things that I don't think people would normally think of. For example, do you have the events where the families can come out and get a family portrait?
Yes.
And people wouldn't think of that. That's something that's so typical of most families, but with the behavior issues and the sensory issues that come along. So we set up situations where the photographer is very familiar, and you can probably tell more about it than I do.
Well, I think most families will understand how high stress it is to get that formal portrait. I don't think, there are two of my own brothers that I don't think we ever got a picture of them smiling as a child because they hated the whole process. Now, these are neurotypical children. Imagine what it's like for the child with the disability who can't express that verbally, and it's a very unfamiliar setting, which is difficult for our folks. So yes, seems to be a simple thing that every family does, but we have families who come to our photography events that have never had a family portrait taken.
Right.
So that's exciting.
That's very exciting.
We offer a trick-or-treating event every year, because some of our folks have never been able to go out and ring doorbells for candy on Halloween.
Right.
And some of our folks who are 45 aren't willing to give it up yet. So
Right.
they're welcome too. And that it's our events are not limited to folks with autism. They are open to everyone, and because I think it isn't just autism. Autism is not the only disability that affects people, and we all need to be out there together in the community.
And a lot of us do have social anxiety, even if it's not a diagnosis that goes along with it. I wanted to mention some of the other activities because there's so much going on. Just this past Monday, you gave a presentation to Columbus Public Schools about dealing with students with autism, correct?
Yes, we had about 140 instructional assistants being trained.
Wow. That's amazing. And this past Saturday, we had a great event, Scramble for Autism.
It was lots of fun. It was a hot day, but I think the golfers all had a great day.
That is great. And something we're particularly excited about is on August 17th, we have an event called Songs for Sarah. And it's at Grandview 5. And it is a fundraiser for autism, but for $5 you get in and you get to see 4 or 5 different bands perform. I mean, that's pretty much a deal. And the door does go to the Autism Society. Let me read off some of the bands. Roadhouse Redeemed, Todd and the Bad Ideas, Zach Whitney and Ian Hemmel, and of course my personal favorite, Blue Spectrum, is going to be performing there as well. But it's a really good time. Obviously, we're open to everyone, and I think people should check it out. I think they'll have a blast.
We are really grateful to Keith Cretin, who organized the event and is donating the proceeds to us.
That's awesome. His daughter, Sarah, who it's named for, Songs for Sarah, she has autism, and she's also deaf, correct? And I mean, we are just so pleased and so thankful that he's willing to donate that to us. So we're really looking forward. We're going to give some information about how to reach the Autism Society so you can find out more information. In the meantime, you can still call in and ask questions. You can reach us at 614-824-2139. We'd love to hear from you. I'd also like to let you know about one of our sponsors, another event we're very, very excited about. For those of you who were able to watch me 2 weeks ago, my guest was Lady Extreme, Nicole Carter, and she is involved with the National African American Male Wellness Initiative, and there's a walk, and it's this Saturday, August 11th at 7 in the morning. I think it goes from 7 to noon, and they're going to have entertainment, but they're going to have lots of information about health, and I think it's going to be a wonderful time and a wonderful event to participate in. Again, that's this Saturday, August 11th at 7 a.m. at Livingston Park, which is in front of Children's Hospital. So we would love to see you there. So just getting back to some of the events, you mentioned TASK, which is the Adaptive Adventure Sports Coalition. I guess it's called.
They have a new name now.
The Adaptive Sports Connection, ASC, but they're near the zoo, aren't they?
Yes, up in that area on the lake.
Right.
The reservoir that's up there.
But we've participated, and it's wonderful.
It's an idyllic spot.
It is. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. But just about any sport you would want to participate in, they have it, and they have adaptiveness. So anyone with any disability should be able to participate, which is so important. We were talking about Songs for Sarah. I mean, there's so many things ASCO is involved with. They sponsor yoga sessions for both people with autism and caregivers. In fact, there's one for caregivers coming up the end of this month, August 28th. It's called Caregivers Restorative. Did I pronounce that correctly? Restorative. Thank you, yoga. It's at 7 p.m. It's in Worthington. It's Centered Yoga, and you can find out more information at the autism site. ASCO has a Facebook page, and they have a phone number and a website, which I think fell down on the floor. So we'll get it, because I want to read that off for people. We'll also type that in on the live feed on Facebook, hopefully. But basically, the Autism Society of Central Ohio, you can reach them on the phone at 614-284-6323. They have a email address, centralohioasa@gmail.com. Again, centralohioasa@gmail.com. And of course, their website, www.autismcentralohio.org. wvko.org. So any of this information that we mentioned, if you want more details, feel free to reach out, and we would love to speak with you. So go ahead.
And one of the things, if you just want to talk to somebody one-on-one about what's going on in your life, that is, I think, one of the unique aspects of our group. We have a wonderful information and referral specialist, Ginny,
Yes.
who is fabulous. We have folks who walk the walk, they've been there, and they can give you that parent's perspective.
Yes.
That you can go to doctors, and the doctors are wonderful, but they're doing the doctor thing, and we do the parent and family thing.
Right, absolutely. It's so important. And that kind of leads into a question I always like to ask. What do you credit to supporting you to let you reach out for help 22 years ago when you reached out to the Autism Society at the beginning? And I'm asking that because a lot of times we're almost paralyzed. I mean, I would think that applied to me at one point too. When you get that diagnosis, it's so overwhelming, it's terrifying, and a lot of times people don't know what to do next.
Well, I'm sort of from the background. My father was a professor. If we wanted something, we went and found a book about it. We read about it, and there was no internet. There was no back then. And so I went to the library, within the first 24 hours after the diagnosis to find information. And there was virtually nothing.
Right.
There were just a couple of books I was able to get on interlibrary loan. So at that point, you don't have my normal go-to information source. And at Nysonger, where he was diagnosed, they had handed me information about the Autism Society Central Ohio support meetings, which then were on Thursday nights, once a month. And I went and I met a woman who had a daughter who was several years older than my son, who turned out lived 2.5 blocks away from me.
Oh, wow.
Became fast friends, and she was a mentor. And through that group, I met other people with older children, and managed, over time to build that support group of folks who were walking the same journey, maybe in a different place in the path.
Right.
And that has inspired me to provide that same sort of mentorship to families that are just starting the journey.
That's wonderful. Speaking of the mentorship, what do you tell families that you first meet who are suspecting their child might have a disability?
Go and get it checked out. The longer you deny the possibility and think, oh, they'll outgrow it, the longer you put off them getting therapy.
Exactly.
And
Right. That it's so important. I know people are scared of it. I mean, people do that with a host of medical issues. They just they don't want to know, but you can't help yourself if you don't get that information.
Exactly.
Then once they get the disability, they get the diagnosis,